Any military service member who's ever been to SERE School will never forget the experience, and that's the point. SERE is designed to give special operators and military aviators the tools they need in the event they fall into enemy hands as a prisoner of war. But what exactly goes on at SERE School? Well, joining me to explain his time there is retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral Mike "Nasty" Manazir, who commanded an F-14D Tomcat squadron and the aircraft carrier Nimitz during his 36 years on active duty. As you'll see, Nasty remembers all the details of his SERE experience, and as you'll also see at the end of this episode, some of those experiences can still bring him to tears, even though they happened over 40 years ago. So let's first tell the viewers what SERE School is.
Survival, Escape, Resistance, and Evasion School, and every pilot or aircrew, NFO, anybody flying an airplane, you could potentially, eject behind enemy lines or crash behind enemy lines. You have to be trained on how to do these 4 steps. And so it occurred very early in my career, and in fact, we were stashed at 126, VF 126 out of Miramar. We were flying adversary, TAD, until we went down to flight school.
So stashed means you've graduated from the Naval Academy.
Yes.
Waiting to start flight school. So you're an ensign with time on your hands.
Yep.
And you had the good fortune of being stationed at a fighter squadron, aggressor squadron.
There were 8 of us down there from the class that were TAD while we were waiting for flight school. And we all decide one time that this message, I guess the message comes out on the message board, SERE School classes are convening. We're like, hey, we ought to go do that. And all 8 guys are like, yeah, we ought to go do SERE. We hadn't even been to flight school yet. We don't even know if we're going to fly anything,
right?
Let alone fly something to then go to SERE as part of the training. So 4 of us actually go. And the other 4 go. They see it for what it is, going, okay, this is idiotic. So 4 of us decide to go. And so we go to Warner Springs and we sign up, and of course the squadron's like, oh sure, go ahead, you knuckleheads.
So Warner Springs is the desert near San Bernardino, more or less?
It's about an hour and a little bit north of San Diego, up Highway 15, out then to the east.
So that's where West Coast SERE is.
Yes.
Is that still there? Do we know?
It is.
Okay, because East Coast SERE is Brunswick, which is basically Maine, and then you go out to Canada. So that's where I went to SERE. So West Coast SERE is at Warner Springs.
And in talking to people that went to either West Coast SERE or East Coast SERE, the comparison of experiences, like in West Coast SERE they waterboarded, in East Coast SERE they did something with a cigarette smoke.
It was cigar smoke.
Yeah.
Or pipe smoke. Borkum Riff. I'll never forget it.
Dear God.
Yes.
So we would compare that kind of thing. So we go up there, we go into, the week starts with lectures at NAS North Island at the D West, the training, the physiological training, facility there. We went out on the beach for a night. We learned, beach stuff and foraged around for limpets and things like that. And of course, nothing else.
Jellyfish.
Jellyfish. It's like camping. And so then we get on a bus. We drive to Warner Springs, and we get out of the bus, go into this ramshackle sort of a classroom where you could hear yourself walk on the wooden floors, and like tromp, tromp, tromp. And in the corner was a big glass cage with this gigantic rattlesnake in it. And we walked in and he was zzzz, you could hear the buzz. And of course we're over there tapping on the glass, and this thing would have come through the glass and got one of us, That was a reminder, of course, that there's rattlesnakes out and, where we were going. And we go out there, we do some land navigation, and I'm gonna cut through some of this stuff here. We do some land navigation to learn how the survival and the escape, the evasion phase, and we got caught. And so of course when we get caught out there, and Ted Morse is my partner, so Tweet Morse is my partner, and this fake Russian dude all of a sudden shows up, prods us with his obviously fake gun, get out from underneath the bush we were in. We get up, put our hands up. He starts marching us down a road, and we get to the collection area where a whole bunch of our classmates are standing already in line, and they're getting interrogated and kind of yelled at and things like that. So Ted and I joined the line together. You stand here, and these guys, little guy, bad guy, little bad guy, and a huge red bearded bad guy coming down the line. And they're interrogating us, and they get to Ted next to me. I'm standing here, Ted's on my right shoulder. And Ted's a couple of inches taller than me, and so the little guy's looking up at him. He's shorter than me, too. And the big guy is standing kind of on the little guy's left shoulder. And so the little guy says to Ted, bow. And we had watched the videos of the POWs, and they didn't bow on, so we were all cocky and stuff. So Ted doesn't bow. And the guy's pulling on his lapels. He's got actually his knee up in Ted's waist, and he's trying to pull him over. And Ted's standing at attention, trying to avoid being pulled over. So the guy stops, and he looks at the big old red guy, and he goes, "If you have an arrogant one here." And arrogant one. So little guy moves aside. He's kind of standing in front of me looking at Ted. Big guy comes over and it winds up and slaps Ted on the right side of the cheek. Just nails him. Full-blown open hand. Bam! Ted goes down like a shot. He just drops right next to me. I'm like, oh, SERE just got real. I'm like, oh. So he gets up, dusts himself off, and the little guy says, "Next time we tell you to bow, you bow." And Ted's just sitting there like this. And I'm like, oh. And so the little guy comes up to me and goes, "Name." And so I tell him my name. Rank, Ensign, United States Navy. Serial number, whatever. And then the big guy asked me the stupidest question, and now I'm relating it, relating it now, it's like date of birth is part of what you're supposed to say. But he asked me how old I am. How old are you? And Geneva Convention does not. And he picked me up all the way over his shoulder, airmailed me onto the ground. Just bam on my back. Pulls me up by the lapels. "Tell me your age." Oh, wham! And I'm laying on the ground. He does that another time because I don't know what to do, right? It's not name, rank, serial number, or whatever. I mean, stupid. Literally, I'm laying on the ground, sucking it. And he leans down right over my face and goes, "Training time out. I can look at the back of your ID card and say how old you are. So you might think about that." Stands me back up. Okay. So then we get marched down to the hard cell. Marched down to the camp. We're all put in a box. It's a 30 by 30 by whatever box. War criminal 36 is on the front of mine. 40 years later, I can tell you what my war criminal number
I was war criminal 1-5.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So I'm in this little box, and I'm like, holy mackerel. And so they had this routine of taking us out, and you can hear people taking off, and there's bang, 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 people yelling. And okay, this is realistic training. And I have gone from this is training to I'm in survival mode now. I get yanked out by somebody. Some other guard guy takes me over into this room. It's got sawdust floor, and it's like a barn room or something, and kind of halfway dark. I go in, there's the red-bearded monster again, and the big guy that had thrown me on the ground. And so he starts asking me questions. Every one I don't answer right, he throws me against the wall. Just bang, and the wall was a corrugated iron that was probably, I don't know, an inch or whatever away from the actual wall, and it would bang and move. So it made a lot of noise. It wasn't that bad. You could kind of deal with getting thrown against it. And so he would do that a lot. And I figured out what to answer, what not to answer. And I did fine in the hard cell. I failed the soft cell, the one where they bring you in, and this time the interrogator, it happened at night, later, that day or early in the morning, because you lose track of time. And he brought me in. There's like a little proverbial lamp. It's dark. He's very nice. It's calm in there. Would you like something to eat? Can I get you anything? We really want to make sure that in accordance with the Red Cross conventions that you're being treated correctly. And so he completely seduces me right in. There's a piece of paper, and he said it kind of has, how you're being treated, and things. We're going to send this home to your parents, and I am totally bought in. And at the bottom, he says, just sign this thing, And so it says, I'm treated well, I'm good, And I was thinking about how to get word to, it's playing the role, how to get word to people that I know that I'm okay, right? So he has me sign it and stuff. And so, all right, fine, go back to your box now, you're be a good war criminal or whatever. I don't know what it was. But they take me back, put me in the box. And the music that had been blaring, 24/7, all this awful, god-awful music to keep us awake and throw us off balance, was going, and they stopped it. And here's this guy's voice, and he starts telling this story about War Criminal 36. Manazir had just confessed to all his crimes, and he signed this paper, and he starts to read this letter. And I broke down. I just broke down. I lost it. And I had failed my fellow prisoners. Even though it was I completely got lost in the simulation to where I was sobbing in that box. I was rocking back and forth on my heels going, and they're listening. I failed my war criminal mates. And that's what it felt like. It was a gut punch to the stomach. And I was not in a training environment anymore. I was just crying. and literally crying. Here I am, graduating the Naval Academy, cocky, going to flight school, thought I was bigger than anything. And I'm crying in this little box. And it really had an effect on me. It's huge. And thinking back on how POWs are broken, I'm not saying Galaxy is anybody like that, but I knew what it felt to fail and to fail my teammates. And that was probably the first real lesson of that. I got taken back out, the dude in the soft cell said training time out. He goes, you passed the hard cell 100, you got like A+ grade in the hard cell. He goes, what do you think you did wrong in the soft cell? And I said, I trusted you. And he goes, that's right, you trusted me. And you can't trust the enemy because he's going to drag it, no matter, they're going to do everything to get you to, to turn your mindset and to start to, and they're going to take it a little at a time. Ours, is pretty direct. We're going to take it a little at a time. Boy, it was a lesson.
So the thing about SERE, as you mentioned, because we graduate from the academy and we start to believe the hype. And this is the first test of, do you represent the words? You've sworn an oath, you're responsible for certain things. And I think the way you get broken down there, because I had a similar experience that you're talking about, and you start to realize, maybe I'm just this facade. I mean, you got to kind of sack up, and it really does challenge you in a way that's necessary, especially at that phase. I mean, you went a little earlier. I went when I was in the RAG. You went before you even started flight school. Yeah. Fantastic training environment. Because you do, the other thing, as we're talking about at the outset, West Coast, they're waterboarding you. East Coast, they're doing pipe smoke, but you're actually getting tortured. I mean, it's no lie, torture. And as you say, because maybe you get the gouge going in from the class that went ahead of you, and they'll tell you, look, I can tell you everything and it won't matter to you. You're like, yeah, sure. And so you go there and you realize when you're immersed in it, I am totally without sort of any context. I am at war. For us, it was the PRONA, the People's Republic of North America, right? And they were, like you say, Slavic, not necessarily Russian. Yeah. But these are like DIA employees, and some were Navy guys. I went in January, and so they issued us snowshoes, right? Like you're going to eject with snowshoes. But if they didn't, you'd disappear in these snowbanks. But they burned our clothes in the, when you're captured. And so you're like, hold it, that's government property. You're burning it, right? And they left us to shiver in our like long underwear. And like you said, they'd slap and they'd throw and they'd knock you out with this pipe smoke, and you'd come to and they'd hit you again and you'd be vomiting and they didn't care. But it does totally make you run to your core. Yeah. What is it you're into here as an officer and a leader? So at the end, there's this really cool thing that really sort of forges in you, and you talk in good detail in that chapter about that. Tell us about what happens at the end of SERE.
At the end of SERE is just this foundational, soul-wrenching. See, I can't even.
It moves you to even think about it.
It moves you, and so the way they finish, you are in one of the mornings, couple days in, you lose track of time completely.
Well, you don't know when it's going to end.
No.
That's right. It's open-ended, as they say.
You feel like you're going to be there forever. It's like, when does this even end? And one of the mornings it was like, about colors time. And they had us on our knees in the sand, and we were breaking the people's garden, and we were, stand up, sit down, bow, not bow, knock down, slap, off to the waterboard, back out again. Guys are they're done completely. And who's the senior ranking officer? SRO. So this P3 lieutenant guy is, he's unfortunately the guy, and has been an SRO, and he's a great dude. They ceremoniously take him up to the commandant's thing, a bunch of yelling, bang, gunshot. We just killed your SRO on the balcony. Who's the next senior man? And I was so proud of the fact the next senior person stood up and said, I'm the next senior man. Boom, 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 hose him down, take all his clothes off. I mean, it's freaking freezing out there, even in the desert. Shower him with cold water, which was just, it was so cold. And then take him up there, bang, 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 who's the next senior guy? This is going on and on and on and on. And we're down and get bow and yelling at him, stand up, sit down in the sand. Near the end of it, they would start playing their Slavic national anthem. And they raise their flag and, you'll bow to our flag, and they have a stand up and stand at attention, and this interestingly colored flag goes up the flagpole, and they play some weird national anthem thing, and everybody bow, and we don't bow, and so you get slapped and knocked down and stuff. So they do that like 3 times. And then, yeah. And then it's our national anthem and our flag. And you can see.
It's in your DNA.
The national anthem played now has that reaction in my head. That. And that's what happens. And it is, I mean.
And this is at the beginning of your career. This is where it was forged in you.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
What a gift.
Yeah.
Right? Again,
Yep.
the best training ever.
That kind of training, I mean, there isn't any other kind of training that gets right to the center of who you are.
For more amazing stories and leadership lessons from Admiral Manazir's career, check out his new book called Learn How to Lead to Win. The Amazon link is in the episode description below. And that'll do it for this episode. If you're not already a subscriber, click the button and ring the bell so you don't miss anything going forward. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon below, or become a patron at patreon.com/wardcarroll. In the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again very soon.